Hello board game brothers and sisters, I'm Adam Singer and welcome to another episode where I'll be letting you know of all the board games launching on Kickstarter and Gamefound over the next week. If you're new here, we do this every single week, so if you do want to stay up to date, feel free to subscribe. But before we get started, I do like to go over some news and announcements, except for I don't really have anything new to go over this week. I do like to give a quick shout out to Alex over at Boardgame Co. because him and I do work together keeping track of all these campaigns so that I can put this video together for you each and every week. But Alex also puts out a video each month going over the entire month, letting you know of the heavy hitters to come. He did just put up his video for me, so if you do want to check that one out, you can find a link to his channel in the description down below. And I do also want to give a mention to Zilla Blitz because he does a similar video, but Zilla Blitz focuses exclusively on historical war games, which is a genre that both Alex and I do not cover in as much detail. So if you do want more comprehensive coverage of even more games that maybe Alex and I won't mention, I will leave a link to his channel in the description down below. And if you do like his content, be sure to show him some love and subscribe as well. And this week is another jam-packed week. I think we got about as many campaigns as we did last week, but I will try to keep this video a bit shorter than that one. No promises, but I'll do my best. Let's check them out. And the first campaign we have launches on May 4th, and this one's called Lord of Conspiracy, Light and Darkness. And this one is a cooperative game, but it also does have some optional competitive elements that you can feel free to mix in. But in this game, your noble leader has been murdered, and the players have been tasked with trying to discover who the culprit was and which of the nobles might be traitors. To do this, players are going to have to locate different clues and witnesses, take testimonials, and use logic and deduction in order to eliminate possible suspects. Players are going to be choosing a faction and each selecting a hero along with 3 lieutenants who are going to be helping them along the way, and players will also get some starting gear and resources. There are some shared decks in this game that players are going to be using in order to explore the different areas and gather different cards, with the most important cards being the Light and Darkness cards, because this is where you're going to be getting your clues and information in order to determine who might be loyal and who might not be. You do also use a unique mix of suspects, terrain, loot, and enemy types every time that you play this game to make sure that every game plays different from each other and that the information you learn in one game doesn't carry forward into helping you in the next one. But this is a game that plays over a series of rounds where players are going to be taking turns performing their actions. In order to perform actions in this game, you do have to spend either a provision or a rest token on the character that you want to activate, and that will allow you to move to one of the displayed locations and then draw a number of light or darkness cards. And the type of card and the amount that you get to draw depends on the current state of the game, the location that you choose, and any modifiers that the players put into play previously, and I'll come back to that in a second. The one caveat when you are drawing these light and darkness cards is that you can also sometimes draw a dungeon card, and if that happens, that card is just going to go immediately into play face down, and it's going to be acting as a new sublocation that players can use an action to visit. And these can be good for the players because although they can be high risk, offering different traps and enemies, they can also be very high reward, providing some really high quality loot. If you run into any challenges or enemies that require you to engage in combat, that's going to be resolved through dice rolling that will be manipulated by different factors, including your team and the gear that you have. But if nothing is encountered, then your turn is going to come to an end. Once players run out of tokens and energy, they can choose to take a camp action that is a free action to take, and this will allow you to recover some of your resources and energy, prepare for the following day, and spend different fire tokens in order to light up different areas in order to allow you to draw more of those cards when you do visit those locations. If the players are able to discover who the conspirator is, go to their location, and then defeat them in battle, then they win the game. But if all the players are defeated before that happens, then the players lose. But if you are interested to learn more about this one, you can go ahead and check it out, and I will have it linked down below. And the next campaign we have is launching on May 5th, and this one's called Casus Belli, and this one's a 4X deck building game in space where players are going to be competing to try and earn the most victory points by the end of the game. And there is a whole variety of ways that you can earn victory points, but it's going to be largely determined by the faction that you're playing as, because players are going to be playing as asymmetrical factions that each have their own strengths and weaknesses. They also have their own ideologies and goals that determine the way that they score victory points. These are typically going to have you completing different objectives like controlling or making alliances with different systems, establishing colonies and outposts, placing out merchant ships, spreading your culture, or acquiring technology and developments. And finally, there is also the concept of corruption in this game, which could penalize or reward your faction depending on where they fall on the moral scales. What's really neat about this game is that it can end in either a peaceful ending where every faction competes individually, or it could end in a war where factions can form alliances amongst themselves and then win or lose as a team. Of course, there is also a shared board where players are going to be taking their actions and fighting over the different systems, and the game does play over a series of rounds, and the way that this works is at the start of each round, some dice are going to be rolled in order to determine which of the systems is going to be affected for that round. And what this means is that if that system is unexplored, it's going to be flipped to its explored side, and this also may involve placing some different tokens on it depending on what's applicable to that system. If the system is already explored, then the owner of that system is going to be gaining 1 level of corruption. In addition to this, an event card will also be drawn that can affect the game and the players in a variety of different ways, such as triggering different hostile entities, increasing tension or corruption, or providing different bonuses or technology for that round. Players will then take turns performing as many actions as they like in any order, with the exception of the explore action, which is usually only done once per turn. But like I said, this is also a deck building game, and you'll be able to use the cards that you have in order to gain some basic resources to help augment these different actions, or the cards might also grant you with some basic actions as well. And there are also other cards that are used in other situations, such as combat or interrupting other players' actions. The main actions allow players to explore nearby systems, to expose new resources or threats, build different types of units for military or trade, or even place those out on the board or manipulate their placement out on the board, occupy or gain control of different systems by placing outposts or colonies or making different alliances. You can draft new technology cards to add to your deck to make it even more powerful, and you can either get these from your faction-specific cards or from a shared general deck. You can also claim alien tech if you do meet the requirements to do so, and of course you can engage in combat to attack different systems, factions, or different events that are presented to you, and all of these different actions could have different implications on the corruption that you gain or lose depending on your decisions, and there are also actions that do allow you to manage your corruption in order to make sure that it doesn't get too far out of hand. At the end of your turn, you're going to be discarding any cards that you played and then drawing back to a hand size of 5, and the end of the game is triggered once all the event cards run out, and players are going to be adding up all their victory points, and the player or team that has the most is the winner. And if this one sounds interesting to you, definitely feel free to check it out, and I will have it linked down below. And also launching on May 5th, we have Agile Unicorn, and this one is a dice rolling party card game where players are all playing as CEOs of a new tech startup, and the goal of this game is to be the first player to reach 32 victory points, and the way that you do this is by completing different value add features which you're going to be adding into your product. The way the game works is that it plays over a series of rounds where there's always going to be one card revealed, and then players are going to be competing to try and claim that card. The way that you do this is by using your employee cards mainly, and you do start with 3 of those. Each of your employees are going to be of a different level, which is indicated by the number of dice in the top left corner, because they also allow you to add that amount of dice into your pool when you are rolling against your opponents. But once the card that players are competing for is revealed, players are going to be choosing which employees they want to play in secret, and then simultaneously revealing them, adding up the amount of dice that they get to roll, and then they're going to be rolling against each other to try and claim that card. Before that actually happens, players will also be able to play any of their event cards in order to mess with their opponent's dice or disable their different employees. But then players will be rolling all their dice minus any penalties, and then whoever has the highest value is going to be winning that displayed card. One thing to note is that there are also incentive cards that you can gain that can grant you with all sorts of abilities and bonuses that you can take advantage of throughout the game. The rounds continue like this until one player reaches 32 victory points, and then that player is the winner, and if you want to check this one out, I will have it linked down below. Launching on May 6th, we have AVghost Paranormal Investigation, and this is a campaign that I did cover in the past, and I also thought it was launching last week, so I also covered it last week, so I'm only going to mention it this time. But this one is a cooperative game where players are ghost hunters fighting back against all sorts of different ghosts. What's really neat about this game is that each of the players also has a flashlight, and each of the different types of ghosts are going to be weak to certain spectrums of light. Players are going to have different filters that they'll be able to swap in and out of their flashlight in order to inflict damage on these various ghosts. If the players are able to survive and also complete their objectives, then they win the game. But if you do want to learn more about this one, you can go ahead and search up my previous footage, or you can go ahead and check out the campaign, and I will have have that linked in the description down below. And also launching on May 6th, we have Occultis, and this one is a competitive game that I couldn't find a whole lot of info on, but in this game, players are going to be playing as powerful summoners, summoning different fiends in order to do their bidding. Players begin the game with the base fiend, but then you're going to be using different mutation cards in order to mutate them in various ways, add new abilities and customizations in order to increase their power. It looks like the game's going to offer a variety of different ways that you can mess with your opponents, but it also says down here that you can discover and hoard ritual components, relics, and arcade knowledge in order to unlock the realm gates or subjugate the world to your rule. I'm not sure if that's indicating multiple win conditions or if it's just different ways to increase your power to defeat your opponents, but if you do want to see what this game's all about, definitely feel free to check it out, and I will have it linked down below. And also launching on May 6th, we have Mighty Shot, and this one's a competitive dexterity fighting game, and this is also a game that I thought was launching a few months ago, so I did already cover this one, so rather than going over it all over again, I'll just go ahead and roll that previous footage for you now, but if you do want to check it out, I will have it linked down below. And this one's a really interesting one because it is a head-to-head tactical duel, but it also incorporates action selection with some dexterity elements. The way that this game works is that each player is going to be choosing an asymmetrical champion that they want to play as. And there's a whole bunch that you can choose from, but they're also going to have their own asymmetrical powers, minions, and their own home field. And you're going to be taking those two fields and then combining them together into the overall battlefield. The way that the game actually plays is that players are going to be taking turns over a series of rounds, deploying their minions into the various control areas on their side of the field, which is going to allow them to collect arcana, which they can then spend to take various actions or injure their opponents directly. In order for a player to take actions on their turn, they're going to have 3 action tokens. There's going to be 2 standard ones and then a signature token. You'll be able to perform any of your standard actions with your standard tokens, and this allows you to summon new minions into your domain or move existing ones out on the board according to their movement points. Or instead, you could spend a token to play one of your cards, and there's a whole bunch of cards offered in the game that all have varying special effects. Or finally, you could use one of those standard tokens in order to shoot a projectile. Whenever you attack an opponent in this way, you're going to be using your shooting track, which is a completely separate board. But the way that this works is that you're going to be shooting your token from one side to the other, trying to hit one of the colors on the target, because each of those colors are going to be correlating to different locations out on the board, and these are all color coded. So this means if you are on a white location, that's going to be a little bit easier to hit than the black locations, and then of course the red locations are the most difficult. These shooting tracks also have some other locations that if you have the right cards or powers, you might actually be able to add some additional tokens onto yours or your opponent's shooting track in order to grant you with some different effects, such as adding obstacles to block your opponent's attacks. These basic actions are going to work very similar for all the champions, but it's that third action token, which is your signature move, which is also going to be unique depending on which champion you're playing as. This is going to allow you to issue a powerful attack if you do meet the requirements to perform it, and it can also come with some other bonus actions or effects that can also be scaled by aligning it with certain conditions. Once each of the players have performed their actions, you're going to be moving into the end of the round, where each player is going to be drawing back up to their hand limit of 4 cards. And as you issue those attacks to your opponent's minions, you could be potentially knocking them off the board, but when you issue attacks to your opponent's champion, you're going to be reducing their overall health. The first player to reduce their opponent's health down to 0 wins the game, and if you do want to check this one out, I will have it linked down below. Also launching on the 6th, we have a campaign that's going to be offering you 2 different games, and what's special about both of these is that they are only made up of 18 unique cards, and then you're going to be combining those with a standard deck of cards in order to play the game. The 2 that we have are called Boil and Bubble and the Dig, and I'll just go through each of those one by one here. But the first one being Boil and Bubble, where players are going to be playing as witches, collecting different ingredient cards and adding them to their cauldron in order to complete different objectives that will earn them victory points at the end of the game. Every round, players will be bidding on these cards in order to try and get them into their possession. You're going to be trying to combine those with the cards that you store away in order to maximize your victory point potential. Players can also use these cards to make offerings to the moon or to their black cat familiar in order to gain extra victory points at the end of the game. And of course, the player with the most victory points at that time wins the game. And the next game offered in this campaign is called The Dig, and this one is also a competitive game, but it does play quite a bit differently than the previous one, because in this game, players are treasure hunters trying to manage their tableau in order to build maps in order to find treasure. Players are going to be starting the game by drafting cards in order to build a 12-card tableau in front of them, which is going to be representing their treasure map. The game plays over just a couple rounds, but each round there's going to be a few of these treasure map cards that are going to be put out on display, and players are going to be trying to manipulate their tableau in a variety of ways in order to try and best match those cards in order to claim their victory points. The way that you do this is by using the different tool cards that are available to you. These grant a bunch of different actions that you can take advantage of in order to manipulate your tableau to best match these cards, and it's the player who has the most points at the end of the 2 rounds that wins the game. And if you do want to check out either of these, you can go ahead and find a link to the campaign in the description down below. Also launching on the 6th, we have Rotation Rumble. And this one's a 2-player head-to-head battle card game where players will be using these small decks of cards to build out a team and then compete in a tug of war for victory points. The way that this game works is that you're going to be choosing one of the decks or mixing them together in order to build up each of their teams, and each of these decks does offer enough cards for both players, and there are 16 different decks to choose from, so there is a ton of variety here. These decks will mainly consist of your hero cards, which have different abilities and effects depending on which side that they're rotated to, and players will be placing these out in different lanes in front of them and then fighting against each other using their actions to rotate and activate the next ability for each of their characters. Players can also gain upgrade cards that they can use to augment their various heroes, and they can also gain different flash cards that can have a whole variety of different devastating effects to help yourself or hinder your opponent. I don't have a ton more info on the gameplay for this one, but hopefully that brief overview gave you a good enough idea to decide if this is one that you think you might be interested in. And if that is the case, I will have a link to the campaign in the description down below, and I'm sure they'll have a bunch more info added to that page once the campaign actually launches, so feel free to check it out and follow along if you do want to get notified. Also launching on May 6th, we have Cinderella at Midnight, and this one's a solo game where you're going to be playing as Cinderella throughout her entire story, and it does play over 2 phases, where the first phase is going to be putting you in a garden maze, where you're gathering everything you need for your fairy godmother to get you prepared for the ball, and then the second phase has you exploring the palace, where you're going to be meeting the prince, leaving behind one of your glass slippers, and making it back before your time runs out. This game is very much a race against time, and depending on how well you do in the first phase, it's going to be giving you a certain amount of time to complete the second phase. In each of these phases, there's going to be a collection of different objectives that you need to complete, like locating your mice or collecting a pumpkin. And you're going to be tracking all of that on a separate card that you'll be rotating as you complete those various tasks. To do all this, you're going to have a token that represents Cinderella, and she's going to be starting on the starting card, which is going to have 4 cards revealed adjacent to it. Each of the cards will have different paths on them that you can use to move Cinderella around on the various cards, and if you are ever moving off the edge of a card, you're just going to be drawing the next card from the deck. This does come with some risk because each of the cards can have different icons on them, and some of them do have these bell icons, and if you ever move past a bell, then that's going to be incrementing the amount of time that you're spending, leaving you with less time to complete the game. Some of these cards even have doors on them that you can use to kind of teleport between them, but this does also cost time to do, and also some of the doors and even some of the paths could be locked, requiring you to complete certain objectives before you're able to use them. Each of the cards can also have some special effects or special actions that you can take advantage of. The ones displayed here are showing you the different actions that you can use to try and fulfill your objectives, but some of the other cards can have some special effects printed on them that you can take advantage of if you do visit that card. And these can allow you to do things like peek ahead in the deck or even reset some of your time, but some of these effects could also be mandatory either when that card's revealed or when you move on to it, and those effects could work for or against you depending on the state of the game and when you trigger them, because they might require you to swap to cards that are either adjacent to you or that are showing different icons, or they might even cause you to rotate the card that you're currently on. Once you've completed all of your objectives for the first phase of the game, you're going to be returning back to the starting card, removing all the cards that are not adjacent to that card, and then shuffling them up into a new deck. And then you're going to be flipping all the cards over because all of these cards are double-sided, and the other side is going to have the palace printed on them. This phase works very very similar to the first phase, where you're going to be continuing to try and complete different objectives as quickly as possible to have the best score at the end of the game. But like I said, how well you do on the first phase does dictate how much time you get in the second phase, and also the cards on the second phase I think are a little bit more challenging. If you're able to meet the prince, drop your slipper, and return home before the clock strikes 12, then you win the game. And if you do want to check this one out in more detail, I will have it linked down below. Also on May 6th, we have Sprites and Sprouts, and this one's a competitive game that plays over a series of rounds where players are going to be trying to complete different objective cards in order to score the most victory points at the end of the game. Players start with a couple of these objective cards, and one's going to be remaining in secret. Each of these cards will have different patterns on them, and players will be using actions to manipulate a shared board in order to create the patterns that they need. And when you're able to do that, you can cash in those cards for their victory points. But at the start of each round, there's going to be an event card that gets drawn that can have a variety of different effects on the game or the players, and also another card will be drawn that dictates which space on the board is going to be harvested by the farmer at the end of the round. This card remains secret from all the players, but whichever space it points to out on the board, the row and column that intersects with it is going to have all of their tiles removed at the end of the round. But until then, players will be taking turns performing actions by using worker movement on their own personal board with their own personal sprite token. This is going to be on one of the action locations, and every time it's your turn, you have to move it to a new action location and then take that action. The different actions could allow you to place, flip, or rotate different sprout tiles out on the board, or they could allow you to gain new objective cards in order to score more victory points for the end of the game. Then there is a magic action that you can use to perform any of those other actions, but with an additional bonus. Every time you take an action in this game, you also get to place one of your tokens out on the main board, and you can either place it on a specific space, or you could place it on any row or column. The reason you're doing this is because you're trying to guess which space the farmer is going to be harvesting at the end of the round, gaining some victory points for guessing the correct row or column, but of course gaining even more victory points if you can guess the exact space. Once the round ends, you're going to be revealing that location, and then each player is going to be scoring their points. And then you're going to be removing any of the tiles in its row or column, returning any tokens back to the players. And then finally, there's a short drafting phase where each player is going to be drafting some new ability tiles that they'll be able to add to the different actions on their board to make each of their actions even more powerful for the following round. Player with the most points at the end of the game wins the game, and if you do want to check this one out, I will have it linked down below. And also launching on the 6th, we have the next game coming from Button Shy Games, and this one is called Shallow Regrets. This one says here that it does re-implement the game Deep Regrets because it is from the same designer, and it also features that same awesome artwork because the designer is also the artist. Although the page says that this re-implements Deep Regrets, and it definitely does borrow some mechanisms there, I still would say that these are two very different games. With this one being a Button Shy game, of course it is a lot lighter, both figuratively and literally, because this game is only made up of 18 cards. But like with all Button Shy games, it does do a lot with those cards because this does play up to 3 players, and the cards are going to feature all types of fish, both fair and foul, that players will be trying to catch to score the most victory points at the end of the game. The one catch here is that you don't want to get too many foul fish, because if you are the player that has the most foul fish at the end of the game, you're also going to be losing 2 points. Each of the fish's victory points is going to be outlined on the top left corner of the card, and then their strength value is going to be on the top right of the card. The strength represents the amount of strength that you need in order to catch that fish, and the way that you gain strength is by catching fish. This means at the start of the game, you can only catch 0 strength fish, which do exist. You can see an example of that in the top left corner here. And then the strength it grants you when you do catch it and put it into your tableau is represented by the hooks on the left-hand side of the card here. Each of the fish can also have different effects and abilities at the bottom of the card, which you can tap in order to activate, but these abilities are one-time use, and once you tap a card, you can't use it for the rest of the game, but you still do gain the strength and any other effects from that card. But now that you know the landscape of the cards and the way that you score victory points in this game, I think the best way to show you how it plays is to just go ahead and show you how it plays, because Button Shy was kind enough to send me a prototype copy of the game, so I do want to thank them for that. And like I said, this is made up of just 18 cards, so you will just be shuffling those and making 6 piles of 3, And that's all you need to do to set up the game. You might have noticed that some of these cards also have different sized shadows on them, and this is also a mechanism inherited from the game Deep Regrets. And what these represent is roughly the size of the fish that you can expect to find on the other side of that card. So we have small, medium, and large, and then we also do have a numeric value at the bottom of the card indicating the range of strength that you can expect. The small ones are all 0 strength, the medium one is 1 to 2 strength, and then the large one is 3 to 5. This is a game for 2 to 3 players, but I'll just be showing you a 2-player game, but the 3-player game plays exactly the same. The turns in this game are very quick and easy, so I think I can just teach you the game as we play, because on your turn, all you're going to be doing is choosing any 2 cards, either from 2 different shoals or from the same shoal, and then you're going to be looking at them and then choosing one to catch, if you are able to catch any of them. We start the game with no cards, which means that we have 0 strength right now, which means that we can only catch 0 strength fish. So for my turn, I'm just going to be revealing 2 of these small cards because I can at least guarantee myself a catch. And we drew the lamprey and the rotfish, and we get to choose one of these to keep and one to go back into the water. And I think I'm actually going to keep the rotfish because it grants an additional strength because of those 2 hooks, which I think will be really valuable early in the game. And it does have a nice power here that allows us to force each player to send 1 fish to the player to their left, which means I could just use that power to also get rid of this fish later, forcing it on my opponent, who will then have -1 victory point. Whenever you put a card back, you can never put it back on top of a small shadow card unless it's the only type of card that is visible. So for myself, I think I'm going to be putting this over the large one since this one does give me 2 strength. I probably want to try and get one of these medium-sized fish in my next turn, which means that I would rather not cover those ones up. This one just goes into my tableau like so, and we'll keep all this player's cards on the left here. Now it's the next player's turn, and they're just going to be doing the exact same thing, drawing 2 cards and then choosing one to keep. And this player got the stingray and the massive eyes, and these cards actually work pretty well for this player because one of them does allow them to kind of counter this rotfish if they do choose to play it a certain way, because this card allows them to exhaust 1 fish controlled by another player. That means that they could force me to exhaust that without using its power, and then I get stuck with that card. I think because of that, they are going to be keeping this one, and then they're going to be putting this one back. And because they know I do have 2 power, which means I can catch these medium-sized fish now, they're going to cover up one of those. Not that it's stopping me too much because there's still 3 of them visible. One thing to note about the fish powers is that you can only use those powers at the start of your turn, which means that I have to decide right now if I want to use that power. If I do, I'll be losing this card, which means that I'll also be losing those 2 strength. But if I don't use it now, I am risking them using their power on their next turn, forcing me to keep this card. And I think I will use the power because not only is it -1 victory points, but it's also one of the foul cards, and I don't want to have the most of those at the end of the game. So I think I'd rather lose the 1 strength and then force them to get stuck with this card. And cards do stay exhausted once they've been used, even if they're passed amongst the players. And that's kind of nice for me because they won't be able to use this power, and also they haven't used this one yet, which means that not only did I get a card, but it also came with its power still available. But now I can go ahead and catch my fish, and I think I am still going to go for the medium-sized fish here because they do have a strength of 1 to 2, and I do still have 1 strength, so as long as both of these aren't a 2, I am okay. So I'm going to push my luck here and see what we get. And we did get lucky here because one of these is just a strength of 1, but they are both foul cards, so we do have to keep that in mind. They're both worth 2 victory points, but the mermaid is really nice because it does also grant me an additional strength, and I do also prefer its power, so I think I'm going to be keeping that one, adding it to my tableau here. Now I'm just going to go ahead and put this one back, and I'll cover that 3 to 5 just because it's of no use to me just yet. Now it's my opponent's turn, and they're going to be drawing the one I just put back as well as the one next to it. And I think they're going to keep the oarfish because although these both have 2 victory points, this one does have an additional strength, which will bring their strength to 3. And also this is a fair fish, which is nice. And the power is pretty good as well. So they'll add that to their tableau and then put this one back. And they know I've already seen this one, so they're going to be putting this on top of the only medium-sized fish that's out on display right now, forcing me to have to pick up this card if I want to get to the one under it. Since it is the start of my turn, I can activate any of my abilities, and I think I will do that to tap this one here to peek at the top card of 3 different shoals. I'm definitely going to peek at these 2 because I think we already looked at that one, but it's really the only only other option I have, and I kind of forget what it is anyway, so I will grab that one as well. This is really just giving me some additional information, so I'm just going to put those cards back. I don't really want any of those 3 cards that I just looked at, which might make it seem like using this ability just now was a bit of a waste, but that wasn't the real reason that I chose to use this ability, because this game is also a bit of a memory game, and the reason I wanted to pick up those cards was not for the cards themselves, although that is good information, but to see which cards were below them. And if you were paying attention, you might have noticed that this deck here had a level 2 fish beneath it. I do get to draw 2 cards on my turn, and I can draw from the same pile, which means if I draw 2 cards from this pile, I can get to that level 2 fish, and because I do have 2 strength right now, I can guarantee you that I can catch it. And I think that was a pretty good choice because I don't mind taking this giant octopus since it is a fair fish, and this one's going to be going back in the water. And we'll just slide these over like that since those ones are already used. Now it's my opponent's turn, and I just realized that I messed up their turn for them pretty badly, so I am really glad that I used my ability to exhaust this card, because this one would have allowed them to draw an additional 2 cards, and they only have 3 strength here, which means that they could go for a large fish, but the large fish are ranged from 3 to 5. So even if they draw 2 of these, there's still a good chance that they won't be able to catch any of them, and this would have allowed them to make sure that they still had other options. But I think my opponent is still going to play risky here and just go for it, so let's see if they get what they need. And they lucked out because they did get one that only costs 3, so it doesn't even matter what the power is, they're definitely going to be taking that. Slide those over there, but the power does allow them to exhaust 1 foul fish controlled by another player. Because there's an empty shoal here, when my opponent puts this card back, they do always have to choose the empty shoal, so they don't have a choice. So that's going to be going back into the bottom left corner, and now it's my turn. And I'm destroying my opponent here because I am going to use another one of my powers, because my giant octopus allows me to swap this fish for another player's fair fish. This is worth 2 victory points, and the one that they just caught is worth 3. So why not? I'll take it. Doesn't really change my strength or do anything like that. This gets exhausted, which means my opponent can't even use it, so I am just stealing all the abilities here. We still only have 2 strength though, and I know there is a medium-sized fish under this medium-sized fish, so we'll just take both of those. I did already see this one before and I knew that, but I was taking my chances to see what we had under it. They're both foul here, so that's not going to affect my decision making of which one I want to keep, but Selkie here is worth more victory points. He does come with this strength, and he does have the ability to swap himself for another player's fish. And I don't want my opponent to get that and try to steal one of my fish, so I think I am going to take that one and put this one back. Now it's my opponent's turn, and they still just have 3 strength, so it is still very risky going for this 3 to 5 here. But we still do have this 1 to 2, which they did see before, so I think they will just go for the 3 to 5. And they know that this is a foul fish because they did see that one, assuming they still remember, so I think they're going to try and avoid that and actually just draw this weaker fish here and hope that it is something better. And it wasn't, but that's okay because the great white shark here is a fair fish, so they'll be taking that one. It doesn't have any strength, but it does have the ability to add 3 strength just for a single turn, so that's not too bad. We'll send this one back. It has to go to the empty shoal. And this player is going to hate me because I will use my ability again to swap this fish for another player's fish. So I'm going to take that great white shark, send this one over here, and I'm going to use its ability right now to increase my strength by 3, which gives me 5 strength, which is enough to catch any of the large fish here. And I do remember when I looked at the 3 cards, this one actually had a level 5 under it, so let's go ahead and draw that one for fun. Fortunately for us, it's a foul fish, but I think we're doing okay here. It's worth 4 victory points, which is really nice, so I think we will go ahead and keep that one, and we'll just throw this one back over here. Now it's my opponent's turn here, and they only have 4 strength, so I think they're okay with those 3 to 5s being covered up right now, so I'm not going to uncover that one, and I don't know what's under these 2 cards, so these 3 cards are both vacant under them. I've already seen that one, so I think they're just going to go for these weak cards and hopefully get something decent. And I think I'll just take this one because it is worth a victory point, and this one's minus a victory point. This does have the ability to give the fish to another player, but I know my opponent's just going to use their ability to exhaust this before I can do that. So we're just going to remember where this one is, which is the bottom right corner. We'll add this to the tableau, and it does allow us to look at all cards in one shoal and then return them in any order. But we already know what's going to happen here. My opponent is going to flip this card in order to exhaust one of the foul fish controlled by the other player. So that ability is gone. Now I'm going to use my other card's ability to flip the top card of each shoal face up. So let's go ahead and do that. And now that information is revealed for everyone. And I think I'm just going to take this one to spite the other player because I'm a terrible person. Now it's my opponent's turn, and they're just going to go ahead and grab these two. I don't know how this is going to work out for them, but they did find the Kraken, which has no ability, but it is worth 5 victory points at the end of the game. They have the strength to catch it, so they will. So we'll keep that card here, and then we'll put this one back. Now it's my turn, and I'll give this fish to another player, which is -1 victory point at the end of the game. And now I get to draw my 2 cards, so we'll take a look at these. I'll grab the Day Octopus, put this one back. And I'm pretty sure that I'm going to win this one, but my opponent's going to take these 2 cards, and I guess they'll just take the Moray Eel there for the 2 victory points. It's safe for me to take this because there's no way I'm going to get more foul fish than my opponent, so I'll just take those 2 victory points. This player is going to take the Lamprey for 1 point, which forces me to take this Sea Bishop for 1 point, and then my opponent's going to take this one. Now we just add up all the victory points and see who is the winner. I have 16 and my opponent has 12, and they have 1 more foul fish than me, so they actually lose 2 victory points. I was definitely playing a little dirty there, but it is the name of the game. You're not playing this right unless you finish with a few regrets. And that's how you play Shallow Regrets, and I did have a lot of fun with this one, but I did also mention earlier that this played 2 to 3 players. It looks like they actually were able to increase that to 2 to 4 players because that's what it now says on their campaign page, so there might have been a couple small tweaks to the rules. But I am really excited to try this one out with 3 or even 4 players because then there are more players I can pick on instead of just my single opponent. But I do recommend checking this one out, and if this one looked like one that you might be interested in, definitely check out the campaign, and I will have that linked in the description down below. Also on the 6th, we have a new expansion for the game MonToons. If you're not familiar with this game, this is a roll and write arena combat game. And this new expansion is going to be adding new guardian sheets, new mechanisms, new abilities, and new battle maps. But like I said, this is a roll and write arena combat game, so each player is going to have their own character that they're going to be fighting as, and you're going to have a unique asymmetrical board representing that character. But then you'll also have a few other boards that you'll keep on the side of your board, and these can actually have some different objectives that if you complete, you'll be able to awaken those boards, adding even more powers, abilities, and options to your arsenal. Because this is an arena combat game, of course there's going to have to be some area acting as the arena, and that is the shared board up here where each player is going to have their own personal tokens representing their character's position in the battle, and players will be able to attack each other on this board but also pick up different resources and different objectives in order to complete the different markings on their sheet. Every round, players are going to be rolling their 5 action dice and then assigning them to various locations in secret in order to do things like move around on the board, attack with either basic or special attacks, power up their creature, or complete different puzzles on your sheet for different bonuses. And then 1 die will always be used for its speed value, which essentially acts as initiative, which decides which player is going to be enacting their actions first. The game continues like this over a series of rounds until one player is able to claim victory by completing one of those endgame triggers. Then they win the game, and if you do want to check this one out, I will have it linked in the description down below. Also on May 6th, we have Relic Wars, and this one is a medieval exploration skirmish game where players are going to be playing as asymmetrical upgradable characters, and you win the game either by being the last player standing or being the first to collect 3 chalices. This is a game that's been designed to be very easy to teach and play because on your turn you're just going to be choosing 2 actions out of a possible 3. You can move, attack, or pick up an item. And that's where I think this game gets very interesting because although players will be playing as different characters, you actually start with nothing at the beginning of the game, which makes picking up and finding items very, very important, and that's the way that this exploration is integrated into this game. Players can discover different elemental spells, pick up different gear and weapons for their defense and attack stats. And the main board is going to be made of a bunch of different tiles that are face down at the beginning of the game, requiring you to explore and just discover and use the items that you're able to find. Combat in this game is resolved using dice rolling in order to determine the attack and defense values of each of the players, but of course the dice you get to roll are also determined by the gear that you found so far. At the end of a round, players are also going to be drawing a Divine Intervention card, which can have all sorts of different effects on the game and the players, and the game continues like this until one of the players is able to achieve one of those win conditions, and then they win the game. And if you do want to check this one out, I will have it linked down below. And this is also one that Zilla Blitz did offer coverage for, so if you are interested in even more details, you can go ahead and find his channel linked below as well. And launching on May 7th, we have Party Beast 7 Game Collection, which is going to be a collection of 7 party games, many of them with adult themes. We have Sir Hide-A-Lot, where players are all trying to steal and hide a wooden knight, and then once you do that, you're trying to evade all blame, and once you do that, you have won the game. We have Moonshine, which is kind of like Truth or Dare, except there are a bunch of different cards that have the different options that you'll be able to choose from. We have Kill, Marry, or where players are going to be presented with 3 different options and they have to assign each of them to one of those roles. The King's Last Hour, where 2 teams are going to be battling to kill or protect the king. Realm of Shadows, where players are going to be betraying, cursing, and accusing each other. Never Have I Ever, the Color Edition, where players are going to be using colored cards to reveal different secrets visually. And Liar Liar Pirate's Bluff, where players are going to be trying to get rid of their hand by lying about which treasure they're throwing overboard. And also on the 7th, we have Rumian, which unfortunately I couldn't find a whole lot of info on, but in this game, players have discovered a new land, and players are going to be competing to develop it into a prosperous kingdom. Players are going to be gathering resources from different regions, crafting and selling goods, constructing buildings, and completing different quests. But because of the limited resources and space, players might be pressured into some PvP battles or battles with bandits, and the game does appear to resolve combat through dice rolling. Like I said, I couldn't find a whole lot of info on this one, so if it does look interesting to you, I will leave a link to their website in the description down below, which should have a link to their campaign page once they do make it public. But if not, it does have a space where you can put your email address in order to get notified once this one launches. And launching on May 8th, we have Dustlings Clash for Candy, which is another game that I couldn't find a whole lot of info on, but this is a game that mixes Take That with a little bit of Capture the Flag. And in this game, players are going to be playing as fictional creatures that live under the bed, and they're trying to collect candy in order to score the most victory points. Players are going to be using their actions to move and place creatures on different places out on the board, and players will want to try and avoid locations where other players have occupied because each of the players will leave a foul stench behind, so you might want to try and use this to your advantage. Players will also have special abilities that they can take advantage of, and you can collect different booster tiles that act as power-ups that you can also use to augment your actions. But players will draw one of those at the start of each round, and also anytime they're able to collect a crumb. If you want to learn more about this one, I will have it linked in the description down below. Launching on May 11th, we have 2 games that I did cover multiple times in the past already, so I'm not going to be covering these ones in too much detail, and if you do want to see the previous footage, you can just go ahead and search it up. I'm not going to roll it in this video, but this is for the new Beeginnings, which is a bee-themed 4X game, and then we have Titan Zero, which is a cooperative game where players are going to be taking down giant titans. Like I said, I already covered these multiple times in the past, so I'm not going to be re-rolling that footage, but if you want, you can go ahead and search it up. But if you do want to see the campaigns, I will still leave their links in the description down below. That is everything I got this week, but don't leave yet because we still got a few awesome pledge giveaways. And the first one here is for Starclash, which is a sci-fi tactical strategy game. And in this game, players are going to be playing as different asymmetrical factions, deploying and moving units out on a hex board in order to try and control different locations, build new units and structures for different benefits, and of course, destroy your enemies. The next giveaway we have is for BananaBoy versus Uni-Con, which is a simple memory card game where you're trying to flip cards and then match them in order to try and keep those cards as victory points. And the cards can either be matched by their background, which allows you to keep one of them, or you can match the card completely in order to keep both of those cards. What makes this game unique is that each of the cards are actually double-sided, which means that anytime you flip cards in order to match them, they actually stay on their flipped side, meaning that every card actually has 2 possibilities that you'll have to remember. And the last giveaway we have is for In the Blink of a Dragon's Eye, which is both a short story and a series of solo games with a game being associated with each chapter. And you'll be following the story of an unlikely relationship between a human and one of the last surviving non-feral dragons. Each game is tailored to each of the chapters, reliving some of those events and taking you through them, and players will be going through an adventure phase where they're gathering different gear and items that they'll be able to then use in a battle phase, and each of the games can have multiple outcomes. I'm going to be running these giveaways over on the Discord, which is still really easy to enter. All you got to do is go to the Discord, which I will have linked in the description down below, head over to the giveaways channel and then click the emoji underneath that giveaway. This gets automatically drawn at the end of the week, and you don't have to worry about getting spammed with a bunch of different notifications because I do have everything turned off on the Discord by default, but we do post here when I find new games, and we do categorize everything by when they are releasing. So if you do want to get notified, we do also have a way to sign up for notifications. Just head over to the roles channel, and then there are a bunch of different emojis you can just click, which will sign you up for various notifications. Good luck in the giveaways, but now let's go ahead and draw the winners for last week's giveaways. And we had a all-in pledge for Trickerion, which we're going to be drawing last. And then we also have Solar Titans, so we're going to be drawing for this one first. And to do that, we're going to be using this fancy application here. All these extra names down here are bonus entries for my members over on Ko-fi who make all of this possible. So if you do like this sort of content, you want to help support it, it really does mean a lot. It makes a big difference, especially because I don't take any games or payment from publishers in order to offer my coverage. But if you're not in a position for that, no worries. Everyone is welcome here. But let's go ahead and draw those comments. And like I said, we're going to be drawing for Solar Titans first. So let's see who the winner is. And the winner is Reefwood, who is one of the members over on Ko-fi, so congratulations on the win. I'll reach out to you and let you know that you won yourself a sweet pledge here, but feel free to email me at adam@shelfclutter.com if you do catch this first. And now let's just draw for Trickerion, and we're going to be doing the exact same thing here, so let's draw from the entries here, and the winner is user XK9NY8U3JD, and they say that April is almost over. Oh, how time flies. It feels like someone is performing managing time magic. If that exists, I definitely need it, but congrats on the win here. Just email me at adam@shelfclutter.com and we'll get that pledge all sorted out. Mineclash always does fantastic work, so I hope you love the game, but that is everything I got for you this week. Thanks so much for tuning in, and until next time, as always, keep that shelf cluttered and the table full.